Today we're joined by the incredible jazz guitarist John Hart, a true master of modern mainstream jazz. A longtime fixture on the New York scene, John has released 16 albums as a leader on Blue Note and Concord and has appeared on over 100 recordings as a sideman. He had a 16-year tenure with the organist Jack McDuff and has also performed with legends like Jimmy Smith, James Moody, Chris Potter, Brian Blade, and Maria Schneider, and he's also headlined major festivals worldwide. Currently a lecturer at the University of Miami's Frost School of Music, John continues to inspire both audiences and students with his artistry and deep musical insight. So, John, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
So, John, the first time I heard you play, I'm gonna take you back probably to around 2007, 2008. I heard you play with Ralph LaLama's group at Smalls in New York, as a quartet. And, you've done so many concerts. If I say that, does the time frame, does a concert come back to memory when I say who I saw you with?
Yes, I remember that gig. And the rhythm section from Connecticut, Joe Corsello and Rick Patrone. Yeah, we did 2 records together. So I think that was a record release for Ralph's record for that quartet record.
So are you kind of, I'm going back and forth between New York and Miami because I know you teach in Miami. So, kind of break that down for us because it seems to me that you're both in the South and up here.
Yeah. Well, I live in Miami and I lived in New York for 30 years. And I got a phone call one day and I ended up teaching here. So to make the story short, took about a year after the phone call, but I ended up here. So I'm in my 13th year teaching here at University of Miami Frost School of Music. It's an amazing school, great students, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm back and forth playing gigs. I was just up a couple of days ago. I recorded a new trio record for Steeplechase with Bill Mooring and Tim Horner. We've had a trio together for about 30 years, so I was really excited to get that group. We've done about 4 or 5 records, but I was really as a trio, but I was really excited to get that group now on where we're all at now. And we sort of reunited and played. And then I was up a few weeks ago. I played at Birdland with my son, Jake Hart, who's a piano player. And so I'm back and forth. I try to get up as much, but I sold my house in New York and moved down here, which is what to do this job. That's what everybody does.
Yeah, well, no, it seems you're up here, pretty regularly. So I know you said you lived in New York for 30 years and then went to Miami. So prior to going to Miami, obviously it was the teaching job that brought you down there. Were you doing college teaching for guitarists before that?
Not too much. I taught at Purchase a little bit and at NYU, mostly as a extended substitute, not really an adjunct teacher, but I'd go in for a couple months and teach at Purchase. I was subbing for Randy Johnston and I subbed for John Abercrombie there. And I used to do stuff at NYU too. But this was the first real, legit job I've ever had in my life.
Well, how old were you when you got that position? I'm just curious if you could share that with us.
At Miami, I was about 50. So.
You see, these things take time. For those who are listening, there are a lot of kids who go to jazz school and they get to the degree because they want to teach right away. But you graduate college when you're about 21, 22, and you got this job when you were about 50. I mean, yeah. I think that speaks volumes about the music too.
Yeah. It's different for me because I don't have a pedagogical background. So I came in and I just teach what I know, what I've learned, What I learned is being a New York jazz musician for 30 years, and I went to University of Miami. I got a degree and I had a really good background from there. In 1983, I left, but I keep that. It didn't occur to me to really the last few years. I tell my students, I haven't had a music lesson since 1983. I haven't taken a formal class or anything, but my whole life was a music lesson.
So you never really had private jazz lessons, you're saying?
No, I did when I was in school.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
I was a student.
Yeah.
But since 1983, I didn't go to grad school or anything. So I haven't, so that was it. That was my, so I really learned a lot of what I do, having a good solid background in music theory and stuff, but what I've done, just out playing, really.
Well, of course that, but first thing you have to know is after F7, you have to play B flat 7 if you would like to.
Yeah. So,
your background. So that's why I say that for the
bring
audience.
that in. Yeah, that was probably for, let me see what's back here. that was, so something like that. Sometimes you'll see stuff up there that's just like insane looking. That's just a regular bebop blues for a student that I think maybe somebody that auditioned here, a high school student. I kind of was hipping them to what a real blues progression is. So that's what that is back.
Are you in Miami right now at the university?
I'm in my office right now. Yeah, actually.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm in my office. I just taught a lesson, and then I have somebody's going to be waiting outside when we finish.
Okay, good. Well, no, I'll keep you,
Yeah, no, we can go as long as you want. It's fine with.
Well, I think that's part of it. You want to keep the student waiting outside as well, right? How bad do they want it?
Yeah, right.
Well, at least I had some experiences like that in music college. So as far as the scene goes in Miami, I know there's some great musicians down there. I know Tom Lippincott, the jazz guitarist.
Right.
It seems to me like you two are the main figures up there in the Miami area as far as guitar players go.
Yeah, there's a lot of great young guitar players, and a lot of them gone through my program. And there's some. I'm meeting these guitarists that are still in high school that are kind of amazing for what they're doing. There's a lot more information, and everybody's kind of gets. It seems. From my perspective, especially in the last 20, 30 years, the young people are just more advanced musically, with what, in terms of just kind of having some of the information, then what they have to say as a musician, that's a whole another story, but I'm seeing that. So it's pretty healthy. With the music scene down here in Miami, it's a very young music scene, the jazz scene. So I would say, really musicians 35 and younger are working. A lot of graduated students and recently graduated students, or the students are gigging. Grad students, people come down here to go to grad school, and they don't leave. They stay here because there's a lot of work. I keep kind of a low profile because I'd be out competing with all my students for gigs. So
Exactly.
I'm here teaching, and that's kind of what I do here. I play a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great outlook to have.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people on the podcast, and some of them, are totally real about what it is to be a jazz musician, the struggles you have to go through. I'm not even talking about having to learn the music, which is one thing, but just to get a career started for yourself. But then I talk to other musicians who everything is peaches and cream. At least that's what they appear to be. But I've always found the lifestyle to be extremely difficult to get involved in this. Do you think that, is there sort of a balance between that? Do you have to go through certain things? Did you go through struggling when you were coming up where it was really hard in that sense?
Yeah. I think everybody does. I think to compare I went to New York for 40 years ago when I arrived there, 1983 or 1984. So very different from what young people might experience now going there. But it's still, New York is still New York as far as I'm concerned. It's still the Mecca, it's still the place to go for jazz. But I moved up, and it's different now because everybody knows each other because of social media. But when I moved to New York, I only knew two people. One was Randy Johnson, one was Ben Monder, and basically that was it. And I just started meeting people and getting gigs, and I did some weird work in the day, and I started teaching to supplement my income, and just going through the whole thing. I used to say in clinics that when I first moved to New York, it took about 5 years till somebody actually said, "Man, you sound good." So a little bit of that. It was tough, but it was fun too. It was fun. Along the way. You have to figure out what I think. You have to kind of set reasonable goals for what you want out of your life.
I did 100 gigs for free when I moved to New York just to gain the experience of what it's like playing for an audience and just pacing a set, real world practical things, just being in real time. Did you have to do a lot of that free work coming up to gain the experience, or were you just kind of doing sessions? Like, you talked to us about that process for you, getting comfortable in the bandstand?
No, I just did gigs, pretty much. Occasionally there'd be, I might, if I was able to book a gig for myself in a club or something, it might be a door gig, or something like that. So that would be the only situation. But I did everything just like everybody else.
You paid your dues.
Wedding bands and every kind of gig imaginable. And, I started to extricate myself after
Oh
that.
wait, John. I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say wedding bands, you're talking about playing pop stuff, not playing like cocktail hours at jazz at weddings, right? You're talking about
Uh,
pop.
yeah, well, the wedding band when I moved to New York, and this doesn't exist too much. I mean, I know it does, but you get there and you got a tux and you got a guitar and an amp, and they have in the cocktail hour that you might do get hired to do the cocktail hour, but what would be different. But otherwise, the band's there, and a lot of times they didn't have a bass player, so the keyboard player would play all the bass. And then you play a couple bossa novas because everybody's sitting down, and then the first hour they're kind of just getting settled and getting their food, and then it's everything from Elvis to the old time rock and roll to the playing the hora to everything to
Disco.
the big band, I can't remember names, anything in the mood, all of it,
Oh, right, in the mood.
all by ear for the guitar player. Did the whatever the disco stuff, or that wasn't disco, I remember it was be like Lionel Richie, hello. Like that all by then it's like, okay, I heard this on the radio. Wait a minute, this is how this line goes.
Were you at work, like in a sense, like I'm here at work right now, or you maybe did you have a couple drinks or something, like and just kind of have fun with it? Because obviously you want to be playing straight ahead jazz, but you're in doing this other thing to make a living.
I think if I had a couple drinks, it was more fun. Definitely.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I can pretty much say I mostly hated it.
Well, that's
But
honest.
on the other side, I would say, and I talk about this sometimes with my students, there's a whole process you have to go through as part of being a professional musician, And when I was there, I was living in Brooklyn and Queens, and I might get a gig out on Long Island, and there's no map, there's no GPS or anything, so the office gives you the directions and you write everything down, and then you got to drive that, and you got to have the tux, which is usually something that's black, anything that's black,
Some people
and then
wear a
you drive
suit.
it, and it sits in your car after the gig. You never take it inside, and you got to have a amp that's small enough that you can take in, but you can also play like Jumpin' Jack Flash if you need to. And do that, and you got to go through, and you got to be on time, and you got to kind of get along with people, and you got to do all this stuff to get paid. You have to go through all these steps to get paid. And that's, part of learning the process of being a professional musician, which you're not going to learn that if you're working as a barista or something. Nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
And then,
On the
but
other side, were you, when you were doing those, you were obviously younger when you were doing those wedding gigs. Were you checking out the greats after, when you weren't working? I'm talking about those who have passed, the ones who created the music.
absolutely,
Yeah, who'd you go check out, man? I'm kind of curious.
absolutely. I mean, I saw everything, but one of the first things I saw, and I'll never forget, and I always tell people these stories. I went to see Keith Jarrett right after they did the first Standards record. And
Whoa.
I wasn't a Keith. I didn't like Keith Jarrett because I was a real hard bopper and stuff. And all my friends now, at that time, 1979, when I got to school, my song had just come out. My song's one of my favorite all-time records now. But I sat about 6 feet from the piano keyboard, and Keith sat down, and as soon as his hands touched the keys, my jaw just hit the
Where
floor.
was this?
At the Village Vanguard.
Okay.
As soon as he played, I just, so I saw everybody from Freddie Hubbard, Joe Henderson, and Elvin Jones. They were all alive. Miles, they were all alive. I never got to hear Bill Evans, which was, I
What
never
about
got.
guitar players?
And the guitar players, most of the guitar players, certainly Joe Pass and Jim Hall. I got to hear Joe Pass many times.
Barney Kessel.
Like, so Barney Kessel I actually heard, and when I was in high school in Florida, I grew
Oh,
up
wow.
in Florida. There was a jazz club very close to Disney World called the Village something, and we drove up and heard Barney Kessel. And we also heard, when I was in high school, I heard Clark Terry there and Carl Fontana, and Dexter Gordon came to Sarasota and played, and I went and sat in the front row, and there were probably about 10 people there, and he had his band this is in the early 80s. He had Eddie Gladden playing drums. Kirk Lightsey was playing,
Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw him at the
not George Cables, and they started out with As You Are No One, with the arrangement with the drone thing. Ba-doom, ba-doom, ba. I always thought, okay, Dexter Gordon's this laid back, he really, and he comes out on that up tempo thing and just plays like 10 choruses on It's You Are No One. burning.
Yeah.
It's burning. Yeah. So it was quite a thing. It was a lot of fun. And so I'm doing wedding gigs, but then I'm getting jazz gigs, and it's a mixture of all kinds of stuff. And one of the things really that was happening in terms of playing creative music is people were having jam sessions in apartments. That still happens. But there it was just like, and sometimes I started looking at that as a gig. Really, I said, this is my gig. I'm doing this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then I'm going to do this other thing. And
Yeah, I mean, you go to those sessions when you're playing with new people and you want to play as well as possibly.
and and I had a group. I had some people that we played with every week too, and that got to be, and just that. So playing all the time, just playing all the time, and trying to leave the other stuff and not letting the other stuff. And then when I kind of extricated myself from doing more commercial gigs, I started teaching more to make up the income. I felt like, and I wasn't crazy. I love the teaching I'm doing here at the university, but the teaching, beginning guitar and all that stuff.
Would you rather teach and do jazz gigs, or would you rather do jazz gigs and do wedding gigs playing pop? Like if you had to pick between
teach and play jazz gigs.
Teach and play
gigs. Yeah. Absolutely. That's the decision I made. So I just stopped the wedding gigs. They never got called again. I
got fired from any wedding band I've ever played with. So
yeah, I might have got fired from some too, but it's for a young person. My advice for young people: take every gig you can do and get paid. We had the great veteran sax player from LA, Pete Chrisley, was here, and who played the solo on Deacon Blues on Steely Dan, Asia. He was on the Tonight Show, and I've been a fan of his since I was in high school. So he was here a few months ago, and he just said, "Yeah, it's different. Yeah, we just played and got paid. That's what it was. Be a musician, play and get paid." There
wasn't this like other outlook about integrity and selling out. You just went to work. That mindset was more prevalent, you're saying?
I think you learn a lot of things doing every kind of gig. And you start playing, you play for dancers, you learn like that. Let's say you're playing a society band, you learn those tempos. You start learning those tempos. And but a foxtrot, boom, booby doo dee doo goo wee da. And when it's time to play that, it's like, I'm not going to slow that down because I know what that is. It's a dance tempo. You learn all those things. You have no idea what you might learn. And then the wedding bands would be amazing. I'd show up with somebody that I've been listening to on records, and suddenly they're there.
Really?
And then the drummer is a policeman, or something.
Oh, exactly.
And the piano player plays. Girl from Ipanema plays G7 as the 5 chord going back to F major. Another amazing person. I mean, it was crazy, So by teaching, I completely divorced myself from the, what might be compromise me as a performer. I think as an artist, and I still did a lot of gigs I didn't like, and stuff. And then I played like society. There's a lot of like society commercial gigs where you just go and play jazz, and certainly those things.
What was the gig you did, like the worst one where you're like, I got to get out of here, or or you quit something? I mean, like, what's the worst one that comes to mind?
I can't remember one. I remember I threw my amp though right in the middle of the street in Queens once when I got home. I got to open the trunk and I took the amp out and I just threw it
because you felt like.
So that was probably a bad gig. But
I wonder who you were.
I can't remember specific.
Yeah.
Again, I have no regrets. I wouldn't really change. I mean, that's how you become who you are, your experiences and stuff. And I just played. I've just played and taught to supplement my income my whole life. That's what I've done. Myself and a lot of people that are my age that I've been playing with, we all kind of did the same thing, and we raised kids and we bought houses and did the whole thing, by doing that.
Yeah,
there is a path. There is a pathway. I think. Music, I think, of being a musician is a pretty noble profession, and stuff. And teaching is a very noble profession too. So,
you seem like a really great guy just talking to you, and you seem really down to earth, and great personality to talk to. But there's a lot of like cliques in jazz these days. There's people. There's a lot of exclusivity. Was it always like that, you think, or
Yeah, there was exclusivity in different ways and
different.
And I think one thing that happened to me, you kind of get pigeonholed, and I was playing hollow body and playing
with the organ stuff.
Yeah, hard doing that and playing my own stuff. But I played, I grew up playing rock and roll, and I played a lot of fusion, and I played R&B. I mean, I could kind of play everything, and people would remember I went on this one gig, it was a wedding gig, and a guy that I'd been playing with for a while, he goes, I didn't know you could do that, play all that R&B stuff. I know I'm a guitar player, of course I can. I was actually in the house band at the Apollo Theater for the original amateur night on Wednesday nights in the 80s. That was a really crazy gig. So I
I mean,
did that.
that's a great venue to play in too, right?
Well, great, but I just saw some crazy stuff. But it was the original one where everybody, Ella Fitzgerald and James Brown, with the original host, Ralph Cooper. It was the whole thing. It was Wednesday night, amateur night at the Apollo Theater with the executioner coming out and taking people off stage. I was there. I did it for about 2 or 3 years playing
Every Wednesday.
So I did everything. And I've been a very versatile musician in jazz, I think, not really consciously. I think just because I like a lot of music and I'm pretty open-minded about it. And I've learned how to play different. I'm open to all the different styles. And I'm able to kind of find, what I work, in one thing, I mean, to play with Maria Schneider, to play with Jack McDuff, that's about as wide as you can get, I think, in the spectrum.
Yeah, that's one thing that's so beautiful about your career in that sense. But you say you did felt like you were pigeonholed just because that just comes with the territory.
It's just I mean, whether that's even a significant thing, but it was something that I've kind of noticed, and stuff that I always thought, but that could be totally different. I don't know, but it seemed like New York is such an intense scene, and there's so many players. Sees you do one thing, they assume that's what it is. I think the music scene and the jazz scene is much more eclectic now, certainly anyway. There's so many more influences in music and people are listening to so much stuff. And most young jazz musicians are listening to a lot of stuff. And my peers I'm probably more than some of my peers, I'm probably more open in terms of different music. And I try to keep up the guidance, stuff, just have an idea what's going on in the music scene. But I'm still going to go back to Sonny Rollins of the Village Vanguard or McCoy Tyner, the real McCoy, or whatever. When the chips are when it's on the line, what are you going to listen to? It's like sorry, Taylor Swift.
I hear you.
It's going to be real McCoy for me.
Always. No, John, thank you so much for talking with me today, and I would love to speak to you again. And have you back on. I really appreciate it, and I know you got to teach in a little bit, but let's end it on that note as far as pick McCoy over Taylor Swift, right?
We'll do it again. Yeah, I got plenty to talk about, but I hope that's interesting. I like that kind of spotlight on that, what we got to do to make it happen.
That's where the conversation went. So
I'll say the people that don't play, that I've noticed that were talented and they kind of change directions. They don't really have that thing where it's like, I got to play, or I'm, just like I have to breathe there, and I think the people that stay in it for the long haul, they figure out how to do that. And
they do that. They think that way.
They figure out how to do that, and I've been playing guitar for 50 years and all I want to do is play the guitar. I want to play it more than I ever do in life. I mean, which is pretty cool.